everyone and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Alex. It's raining outside and I have the day off. I am not one of those people that is very good at sitting at home and doing nothing. On a day off, I always feel like I need to accomplish something. So my goals for this morning, I'm going to go to one of my favorite local coffee shops. I'm going to get a cup of my favorite coffee and I'm going to go over to one of my local libraries and sit and attempt to finish There by Tommy Orange. Now this is not a particularly long book. It's only about 290 pages and I'm on page 204 right now. So I could definitely get through this today, no problem. But I really want to finish it before I start my reading sprints tonight because I'm hoping to begin Away. And I've been really looking forward to that. I have a friend who just got done reading it. He told me that he enjoyed it a lot and that he thought that I would enjoy it. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun. In terms of my feelings about this book, I would say that I do like it. It reads very quickly. The writing is beautiful. It's poetic. I have highlighted many passages in here that I think are just mind-blowing. Like I actually have a tab. I don't know if you can see my little tabbies in here. I didn't tab this book up as much as like some of the other books I've read recently, but I have a tab, the purple one, that is literally just damn. Those are like the really hard-hitting quotes and something that I will be going and I will be thinking about for a long time. As of right now, I would say that this book is memorable and that I would recommend it to people, but I really want to see that the way the ending cinches because I can see where the narrative is going. Honestly, it's probably going to be very tragic. There has a lot of pain and suffering and generational trauma by Indigenous people, and I don't really read a lot of stories like this, and I want to make sure that I'm taking the time to appreciate and understand the author's perspective and all of the heart that the author put into writing this book, but also just understanding that this is the way that people feel and this is the way that people are living their lives right now today. Even though this is fiction, it's based on our reality. This is, I would argue, literary fiction, maybe contemporary fiction. But with that, I'm gonna go out. I'm gonna get my cup of coffee. I've already had breakfast today because I can't drink coffee on an empty stomach. And I'll meet you at the library. So guys, I'm sitting in my car. I drove over to get myself my favorite coffee, turned around to go back the other direction to come to the public library, and pulled up only to find out that they're closed because they're doing work on the inside where they're having their carpets cleaned, and I can see that there's some people out that are also cleaning the exterior windows as well. So I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do. There's another library that I could drive to that's relatively close by. It just feels kind of funny because I wasn't planning on going there. So it's either I go to the other library or I turn around and go home. We'll see my decision in a minute. Hey y'all, so you saw that I did decide to go to the other library, which was like an extra 20 minutes away from my house, which was a little irritating, but I was okay with it because I felt like it would be a really good environment for me to finish there, which I did end up doing. So I was able to accomplish 3 goals for the day. I went to the library, I got my coffee, and I finished my book. I attempted to film a video in the car right after I had freshly got done reading this. I didn't really take any break. I just packed all my stuff up, went to the car, and then started trying to film. I don't think that that was a good idea because I wasn't particularly eloquent. I don't necessarily think that I'm going to be eloquent right now, but I'm hoping that I'll kind of get my thoughts across in a better way than I did in that prior take, so we'll see. If I had to express my final thoughts on There, I would say that this is a book that I'm going to need to sit with for a little while because this is a perspective enhancing story. It tells the tale of Indigenous generational trauma and it is a perspective that I'm not very familiar with, and I thought that this was quite enlightening, and I appreciated Tommy Orange for telling this story, especially for people like me who are quite ignorant about what it is like to be, as he describes it, an urban Indian, you know, an Indigenous person living in the modern world. I'm going to give a huge trigger warning for people who have lost anybody to gun violence, to suicide, to drug abuse, alcoholism. All of those things are in this book, and it honestly is pretty difficult to read. This is really the story of the United States. I mean, what we did to Indigenous people who lived here in the United States hundreds of years ago is still prevalent in our society today. It is absolutely no surprise for anybody who lives in the United States or outside of the United States that the US is a country that is divided by violence and systemic racism. And both of those things are very prevalent in this book. So I went into this book with some expectations. I go into every book with expectations. I don't know how anybody doesn't. You know, if you read the back of a book and you kind of form this idea of what the plot might be in your mind, at least I do. And this book was nothing like what I expected it to be. So what I thought this book was is you have all of these characters who are all converging, going to the big Oakland powwow, and on the back of the book it says that they all, you know, share some type of connection that none of them really know about. So I thought it was going to be mostly a story about these characters meeting there and getting to know one another, and they're going to realize that there's some sort of thread that connects all of them and like all of their lives together. And it is true that all of their lives are connected in some way, but it's not through them speaking to one another. You end up learning everybody's backstory through their own little vignettes and their own blurbs about their lives. And sometimes people are talking pretty much exclusively about their pasts, and sometimes people are talking about the present, about what's happening to them right now. And we as the reader learn all of the ways in which everyone is connected, but the characters themselves don't necessarily see all of those threads the way that I thought that they would. Overall, the book moves quite quickly. All of the vignettes are pretty short, so it doesn't take a lot of time to get through the book. It ended up taking me a bit to read it, one, because I like to digest the books that I'm reading, but also I just had a busy week, and so it took me a little bit longer to get through this than I wanted. I think that this is a quite powerful book. I had a lot of sections, I think I mentioned prior, that I underlined because I think that the author, Tommy Orange, has a really beautiful way of writing. And overall, if I have to give this a final rating, I would say that this book definitely earned being a Pulitzer Prize finalist, and I give it 4.5 stars. Yeah, it's about 3 o'clock right now. I have my live show starting at 5. I'm going to take some time for myself to prepare before my live show and rest, and then I get to start Alexie, which is a really gorgeous book, and this is also the one of all of the books that I'm reading this month that has won the most awards. If I had to guess out of the 4 books that I knew that I was going to read this month which one was going to be a 5-star, I think this one is going to end up being a 5-star, but I have no idea because I don't typically read YA, and this is also a YA mystery, like a thriller mystery. At least that's my understanding of it, so we'll see how well it holds up, but I'm hoping that I really enjoy this because I've heard so many good things about it. But I'll see you all in a little bit. Hey everyone, it is officially Saturday. It is 2 p.m. I'm going to be heading over to a friend's house here very shortly to hang out with some people. I hopefully was able to insert some footage from my live show last night to tell you a little bit about Alexie now that I have started that. I am really loving this. Also, my live show last night was the best that I have done so far in terms of like the number of people who were able to attend, how successful it was, like how many hours people stayed and hung out with me. I had an absolute blast. It was so much fun and everybody was like really engaged. So I'm considering actually changing the day of my live shows from Mondays to Fridays since people seem to really enjoy that day. So I'm going to give it another shot and see if like I have the same level of engagement. So that was really cool. Thank you all to those of you who came. It meant so much. I'm going to continue to read Alexie. I ended on chapter 9, the beginning of chapter 9, and this is just so charming. My current reading tabs that I have right now, if you want to know what like the different colors mean. I have blue is ghosts, green is funny, like a pinkish salmon color is for murderer, the dark purple is for the magic system, and like this light peach color is for our main character Ellie's sixth great grandma, who is like this legendary hero who is able to use the same powers as our main character to save a bunch of people and go on all of these adventures. I can definitely say that this book is the most lighthearted of the stories that I've read, which is an odd thing to say because of the fact that our main character is investigating the murder of her cousin, but there's the tone really that sets it apart because it's not dark, it's not brooding. Our main character is witty. Yes, she wants to solve a murder, and yes, she is taking it seriously, but she's still a teenager, and she's also kind of, you know, teaching us about the world and the magic systems and the different creatures that are involved in here. And I'm just really enjoying it, and I noticed that this is labeled as Alexie #1 in Goodreads, so I'm wondering if there is going to be a book 2. I'm going to need to look into that because I'm based off of how I'm enjoying it right now, we'll probably end up wanting to read a second book, but I'm going to continue in this. I'll be sure to let you know my thoughts as I progress, and I'll see you all in a little bit. Hey everyone, so funny story, I am in the same shirt, but it is not the same day. I left you on Saturday and I was reading on the couch. I ended up taking a nap, and then I didn't get any reading done on Sunday because I was working on my The Only Good Indians review video. So now I'm back on Monday. I washed this shirt, I have not been wearing it for the last 3 days, and I started reading again today. And now I am on page 166 of Alexie, and I'm still really enjoying it. One of the things that I appreciate about this book is that our main character, when she is discovering clues or she's trying to seek answers, there isn't a moment for us to think that we're solving something, that we're figuring something out that she isn't. Ellie will say something and then immediately draw the same conclusion that you or I would over the course of this story, which is something that I'm not really used to. I'm used to trying to figure out the details that our main character is just missing or completely oblivious to, which is usually very irritating for me. So I'm actually impressed with Ellie's level of intelligence and resourcefulness, but it's also not out of character, like the information that she's getting, because she's only 17 years old. So this isn't something where like she's a super genius or she's hacking any sort of systems. She's not going on some sort of adventure that a teenager wouldn't get into. Her parents completely support everything that she's doing right now, and honestly, it's really normal, despite the fact that there's magical elements. But I mean, in terms of the possibility of the story, it's normal. The language at times I can tell is meant to be more of a YA book than an adult book, because there's just this level of teenage snark that you really only get from a YA novel. That said, I really appreciate that there is no romance element that is getting in the way of the story. Ellie is fully dedicated to just trying to solve the murder of her cousin. There are definitely some very entertaining parts in here though. One that I just got done reading was Ellie engaging with a TV psychic who ends up being a total carnival huckster, but her best friend Jay, his aunt, is also a psychic, and Ellie brings her to the crash site and is like, hey, can you tell me about what happened here? And she's able to glean way more information. Right now it's just a really fun and entertaining romp. I honestly hope that it continues in this vein because I like the way that it's written. I also appreciate the Lipan Apache elements in here, and how like there is an encounter with a vampire, and you know how vampires have to be welcomed into somebody's home? Well, they are on Lipan Apache land, and her mom is able to banish a vampire by basically telling him, you are not allowed in our home, meaning the entire territory of their land. And I thought that that was really great. This is one of those stories where Darcie Little Badger, the author, was really great about making sure to incorporate, all of this cultural degradation and the injustice that has happened to her people over the course of their history, while also encapsulating it into this really charming story that isn't heavy-handed. It doesn't feel political. It doesn't necessarily feel like a statement. It feels like she is educating us about her people and her tribe in this setting. But I certainly appreciate what I have learned from this book so far, and I'm really excited to see where it goes, so I will update you soon. I have no idea whether I'm going to be wearing a different shirt or not, but I will update you soon. Hey everyone, so I have been terrible at updating all of you because it is actually officially Wednesday. I just went and got a haircut, so I'm freshly shorn and I feel a lot better even though it definitely feels a lot colder outside. I just got done making a cheese ball for my family gathering tomorrow for Thanksgiving. It's one of my secret family recipes. My cheese ball is famous among my friend group, so I'm not going to be sharing that one, but I am going to be making a pull-apart bread tomorrow, and I might share myself making that only because I've never made it before, so if it doesn't turn out very well, we all can collectively laugh at me. Since it is Wednesday, Kat is doing her reading sprints tonight, so I'm actually about to dive into those while Keaton is out in the kitchen making dinner for us, and he has a documentary running in the background, so if you hear background noise, that's what that is, just to let you know. I am currently 266 pages into A Lass Away. I believe that we have officially discovered the secret that is going on of how the murder happened and what the motive was. I'm very curious to see how this is going to end because I still have about another 90 pages. So I think this is where the action is going to start ramping up in this book. Overall, I still have a very positive feeling about it. I wouldn't necessarily give this 5 stars just because young adult fiction isn't typically for me, but I would say right now, 90 pages away from the end, it's probably about a 4.5. So we will see, but hopefully I'm going to be able to update you about this not another 2 days from now. Alright everybody, I actually have an update and it's still the same evening. It is still Wednesday. It's about 10:30 at night. I joined on Kat's reading sprints, which were fantastic as always, and I actually won a book from one of her giveaways, and I was really excited because I got to select which one I wanted from the little pile that she still had left, so I have requested the copy of Fire Girl, and she's going to ship that to me, so thank you again, Kat, if you end up seeing this. I just think that that's such a cool way to unhaul books that you don't want anymore and to just give them away to people as gifts and to ship them to people for free as well. That's just so nice of you, so thank you so much. I also officially finished A Lass Away, which I'm really glad about. I have to apologize because all throughout this reading vlog and even during my last sprint session, I was mispronouncing the name of this book. So other creators on YouTube I had heard review this book, and I always heard the name as A Lass Away, there was a silent T in the name, the T wasn't pronounced. Well, it turns out it's actually supposed to be, so the name is actually A Lass Away. So my apologies for that. I will correct that during the rest of this video. So now that I have finished this, I was actually struggling a little bit with what rating I wanted to give it. I really liked it. Just want to tell you that right now. I know that my rating of The Only Good Indians is a solid 4. I'm very comfortable with that rating. I gave There 4.5 stars, which I also feel pretty good about. I was trying to compare my feeling about A Lass Away with those books and see did I like it more or less than the reading experience I got from the others. I would definitely say that I enjoyed this more than The Only Good Indian, so it'll get a higher rating than a 4. But did it get as high of a rating as There? And that's the real question. If I had to compare the two stories, I would say that There was more eloquent. I appreciated the prose more in this book. It was more perspective enhancing. This is a book that you want to read if you kind of want to educate yourself on the lives of Indigenous people. I think Alexie is more for everyone. This is a lighthearted story, but it has some deep emotional moments, especially when talking about the death of family members or our beloved pets. This is definitely a fun romp. I would say that the tone of the book went from being snarky and YA to a little bit more serious as we got towards the end of the book, which is something that I appreciated. I would say that it still felt like a YA novel at the end because of, I don't want to say the ease with which our main character solved her issue, because there was definitely a lot of action that happened and I appreciated that. It's just sometimes in YA you have to just recognize that our main character is going to be able to solve the problem regardless of what the problem is, and I definitely feel that this book is like that, which is okay, it's fine. But one thing that I always remember when I'm reading young adult fiction is you're not really going to have anything too overly bad happen to the main character. That's one of the things that separates YA, I think, from adult fiction, is because adult fiction typically has higher stakes than a YA, because you're expected in a YA almost to always have a happy ending. At least that was my experience when I was growing up, that YA novels usually had a main character who was able to overcome anything, unlike in adult novels where sometimes things just go horribly wrong. So that is something to keep in mind. But if you were wanting a story with a plucky main character who has a ghost dog and a very supportive best friend and a family that backs her up, and they're all going to this town to try to solve this murder that they're pretty sure that the whole town is in on, this book honestly might be for you. I would recommend this, and I did enjoy it, and I would read the next one. So where does that leave my rating for this book is the real question. I definitely enjoyed the world building in here. I thought that the creatures that we were introduced to were really cool. I liked the stories that were told about Six's great-grandmother. I thought that those were awesome and that she was a total badass. I liked that Alexie was named after her and that they were very similar in character and with their abilities. I think the magic system in here is really cool. I don't think that all of it has been explained, simply because we will probably get more in this universe, so I look forward to expanding on what was in this book. There was one moment in here where there was something that was said that to me didn't make a lot of sense, and it never came back up again in the book. I can't talk about it without spoiling it, so you'll have to forgive me that I can't really elaborate on that. If I remove that one instance where that happened, I would say that this is very solid and that the narrative is consistent with its own world building and its own rules. So if I had to give this a rating, which I absolutely do, I'm actually going to say that it falls in between There, and The Only Good Indians, so this is going to get a 4.25. Which means that I am going to be on my last Indigenous Heritage Month book from my TBR for this month, and the last one is The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian. This one I'm fairly certain is a middle grade, so I went from 2 adult novels to a YA novel to a middle grade novel, so I kind of worked my way backwards here, but I'm really excited to get into this. I did say in my TBR video that this was the National Book Award winner. I know a lot of people have talked about this. Many people have read it. When I brought this book up in my TBR video, I had people commenting that they had read this and really enjoyed it, so I have high hopes for myself. I'm not going to start this tonight just because it's so late, but I would like this to be the last book for this reading vlog, so I'll definitely update you on my progress. I'm hoping that I might be able to start it tomorrow, but tomorrow is Thanksgiving. I have some cooking that I gotta do. I'm going to be getting together with my family, so I don't know that I'm really gonna have that much reading that I can get done, but I might try. If nothing else, I will be showing you all some footage from my live show on Friday, where I would definitely be reading this. I doubt that I would get done with this before my live show then, so I'll see you when I see you. Hey everyone, it is officially Thanksgiving Day, and I already started making my pull-apart bread, and I completely forgot to go and set up my camera in the kitchen before I did so I'm gonna go set it up right now, and I will tell you what I've already done. I will also include the link down below for the recipe for the pull-apart bread that I'm using, because I didn't come up with it, and I feel like it should be shared with everybody. So let's go to the kitchen. Just in case you've ever wondered, this is why bakers have such strong forearms. And now that I have to let the bread rise for an hour, I'm going to take this time to actually begin The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian by Sherman Alexie. Alright, so I'm into the first few chapters of The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian, and I feel like I need to explain a couple things. So the first is, this is not a middle grade novel, this is also a YA novel, although the way that this is written is very, very different than Alexie. This is an incredibly mature story that has a lot of emotion. It is taking itself seriously. It's brutal in every respect of like everything that I have read so far. So our main character, Junior, he was born with extra cerebral fluid around his brain, and he had to have an operation when he was an infant. When they performed the operation, they took out a lot of the fluid, but he ended up suffering from brain damage. So he has a lisp, he has a stutter, he has an abnormally large head and abnormally large feet. His eyes give him really terrible headaches because one is nearsighted and one is farsighted, so he has to wear glasses. He was born with 10 extra teeth than the normal amount of teeth that a person has. He is severely bullied, and on top of that, his family is also in poverty. So he talks about how, yes, they sometimes go without food. They don't really have, access to a lot of things, like he can't get nice clothes. But the main thing that he talked about that was really hard for him was the death of his dog. So his dog got really sick and they couldn't afford to take him to a vet, so his dad had to take him out to the backyard and shoot their dog. I really can't win this month with the number of pet deaths. This is the third book out of the 4 that I'm reading for Indigenous Heritage Month that has animal death. I mean, at least in Alexie, the animals come back as spirits, so it didn't feel as sad if you lost your furry friend, but the only good Indians in this is going to be heartbreaking. Like, I just know. But yeah, my bread should be done in about 10 minutes, and I'm going to reset up my camera to face my countertop again, and I'm going to get to form them into their little balls and roll them out with my brand new mini rolling pin, which I bought specifically to make this pull-apart bread. So I think that this is going to be a fun process. I'm hoping that it turns out well. little extra garlic, just because I like mine to be garlicky. And when I mix this up, I'll be able to tell how much herb I have in here and whether I want to add any more, because I'm technically using more butter than what the recipe calls for, and I'm totally okay with that. Okay, so now I gotta roll these out into approximately 5-inch discs. Never done this before, so. They do not have to be perfect circles. That is perfectly okay. They're only supposed to be about 1/4 of an inch thick, which I would say is about right there. I'm just going to set this aside for a second. This is the bad part about using flour, is sometimes if you use a little too much, they don't want to stick together at the seams. So that's my fault. I over-floured them on my cutting board, but that's okay. We persevere, we continue. So actually, because I over-floured my cutting board, I'm gonna get a plate to butter these on and cut them on, and I think that that'll work out a lot easier. So what I'm gonna do for the butter is I'm actually going to set these down here. I'm going to do a dollop of the butter, just as much as I can kind of fit in a spoonful. I'm going to just spread this around, give it a nice coating, because these are going to be in between all of the slices while it's cooking in the oven. And then when it's spread out like that, I take my pizza cutter and I cut it in half, like so. You have nice 2 pieces that are about the same size. Kind of lay them on top of one another like that, and we're going to create a stack that is going to go in this loaf pan. This is also kind of the fun part about cooking, is sometimes while you're cooking you figure out a more efficient way to do something. So actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to butter this, give it a nice coat, and then I'm going to lay this piece on top of it again. They don't have to be exactly the same size. It's not perfect. It doesn't need to be perfect. The important thing is that it tastes good when it's done. That is my philosophy about baking. If it's pretty, that's kind of just a bonus. Create a nice stack here. I'm going to do it with another one more, maybe a little bit more butter. You can't really have too much butter. This one will be a big one right here. This was a little disproportionately large on some of these cuts, but that's okay. Give it a good flip. It's also a nice way to help keep your rolling pin from sticking. If you did use flours, if you kind of roll it for a little bit and then you flip it, the other side isn't going to be as tacky. At least that's my experience. So I'll bring my plate back over. Oh yeah, this is a big one. There we go. Lay it on top here. Heaping of butter. Okay, and that's a good little stack to cut in half. So I'm going to go through here, cut them all at once. Look at that efficiency. Look at that. Beautiful. Stack them on top of one another. Set them in the loaf pan. I'm going to definitely have to squeeze some of them together when they're in the loaf pan, because I'm only, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm under halfway done, but the loaf pan is over halfway filled. So That's okay. I'm going to kind of moosh them. I'll moosh them at the end. That is a technical term, mooshing. You've heard it from me. Here we go. This one could have been a little bit wider instead of taller, but that's okay. It's good to see that the dough is springy because that's what we need. We need for the dough to be elastic and for it to kind of go back to shape after you touch it. So that should hopefully mean that I kneaded it enough as well. So that's good. Unfortunately, sometimes with bread you really don't know until you have actually finished baking it whether any part of the dough making process went awry. But I'm not overly concerned about it because my family really likes my bread. And even though this is something new, I'm at least somewhat familiar with the process of making bread. I'll kind of pinch this one together. And they wouldn't be mad at me even if it didn't turn out perfect. It's a beautiful part about cooking for family. They shouldn't care. I think the hardest part about making bread really isn't even the making itself, it's the cleaning up afterwards, because the dough and the flour and the butter and everything, it gets everywhere. But what a delicious mess. Just to kind of show you where we're at right now, this is what it looks like. I'm kind of packing them back a little bit because when they rise, it's going to come out a little bit more. They're going to get even poofier, and I need to be able to fit these other 4 rolls in here. Making bread is really just a huge labor of love, but that's one of the satisfying parts about when it's done, especially when it turns out really nice or it looks pretty. You end up feeling like you accomplished something for the day, especially when it's a 3-hour process to make, and then you really accomplish something for the day. I don't know why I buttered that on the counter. My brain must have been somewhere else. I was thinking about my last steps here. Got a fair amount of butter left over. Not too much. Oh, beautiful. Look at that. Mwah! Perfect. Love it. I think I'm just gonna kind of take my hand here. I'm actually gonna, this might look really silly. I'm gonna kind of rub some more just kind of over the edges here where the butter didn't penetrate. The whole thing really has that nice garlic herb flavor. Okay, so this actually has to go back into the oven to proof again. I have a proofing setting on my oven. You can, of course, let it proof on the countertop, but it has to proof for about another 30 to 40 minutes because I used a fast-acting yeast, a fast rise yeast. I think it's going to be on the lower end of that spectrum, but it should kind of get a little poofy, but I want to make sure that it's not overproofed. So I'll be back shortly. All right, it's done with its second proof. The oven is preheating to 350, and here it is. This is beautiful. It looks delicious. I cannot wait. I did read in the directions that because of the nature of this bread, it might end up browning on the top a little soon. So if that happens, I'm going to tint it with foil just like you would a turkey. And I think it's going to turn out great. So the next time you see this, it's going to be baked. Guys, I am so happy. Look at this bread. It turned out perfect. Oh my gosh. It's so lovely and golden. I did end up having to put foil over it after it had baked for about half the amount of time, just because I noticed it was getting brown. And I was like, okay, I want to make sure it doesn't crisp up too much. So I baked it with foil on top of it for half of the time, and it turned out looking like that. It is so good. I can't wait to try it. I mean, can I say it's good if I haven't tasted it yet? It looks really good. I'll put it that way. But I'll be sure to report how my family feels about it, and you're going to get to see my cheese ball here in just a second. So this is my family cheese ball. The recipe, in terms of the ratios and everything, is a secret, but I think it's going to be so delicious. So I have my cheese ball, which is cold, and my bread, which is hot, and now we got to get packed up and go with my family and hang out with them for Thanksgiving. So I will see you all in a little bit. Hey everyone, it's Friday, and I can confidently say that my bread and cheese ball were a huge hit for my family's Thanksgiving. We ended up having a lovely time. All of the food was amazing, and we kind of just chilled out and hung out as a family afterwards. A couple of my family members ended up playing Mario Kart. I was chilling on the couch just to kind of talk with everyone, and then the food coma hit because we had consumed so many calories, and Keaton and I needed to go home. But I did take home a bunch of leftovers because you can't not when you've produced that much food for Thanksgiving. I have a live show in about 2 hours, so you'll end up seeing parts of that a little bit later, I'm sure. Today has been nice. It's been a combination of relaxing and productive. I was determined for my little break that I had for Black Friday and Thanksgiving that I was going to clean all of the baseboards in the house. So I did that, and I got through like 6 Swiffer dusters because of like just how much dust and cobwebs were around, which is probably shameful for me to admit, but I was determined to clean, so at least I got the cleaning done. Keaton ended up doing the dishes, and he's running a load of laundry right now. I'm gonna end up vacuuming and putting up the Christmas tree and everything a little bit later, so I'm excited about that. You'll probably end up seeing some footage from my tree being up. I have a rule in my house that I do not put up anything for Christmas until after Thanksgiving is officially over. That's just like a pet peeve of mine. I know other people though, they start celebrating Christmas around Halloween. So it kind of just depends on whatever holiday is your favorite. But for me, I can now put up my tree. I have read some more of The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian. I'm on page 68 right now. This is a really hard-hitting book. It's beautifully written. I actually think of the 4 books that I have read this month, so far this one is my favorite, which I did not expect at all. There are a lot of topics and themes that are discussed in here. Of course, there's the topics of poverty and what it's like to grow up on a reservation and how like violent and abusive sometimes growing up on a reservation can be because every family, including yours, is usually poor. Alcohol, drug abuse, physical domestic violence, like those are all topics that are handled in The Only Good Indians, They're There, and The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian, and the fact that each of those is from an author that is from a completely different part of the country, and each one of them is either a part of a different tribe or grew up on a different reservation, but they all kind of share that same history and that same community. And it's just so sad because you end up realizing that for Indigenous people as a whole, that there's no escaping the generational trauma that they're experiencing. It doesn't matter what part of the country they're from, it doesn't matter what tribe they're from, they're all experiencing a very similar way of living. Of course, there are many people at fault for that, and I think it's really important that these authors who have had these experiences and have viewed their communities fall into disarray and into poverty and into violence, that they are able to share that with the rest of the world, and especially for the rest of us here in the US, we need to know what is going on in their lives, because if we don't, nothing is ever going to change. I'm sorry if you can hear my dog Barker chewing on his bone. He decided to gnaw on it right when I was filming, and I'm not going to stop him because he's having a good time. One of the really big topics that is being discussed in here is bullying, because our main character Junior, growing up on the reservation, everybody just beats the crap out of him all the time. He talks about how he's been in like 100 or more fights, and most of them he's lost, and he's really no stranger to being beaten up. He doesn't want to be beaten up, he doesn't want to be bullied, but he's like, this is just the way of our people, this is the way of our land, these are the rules that we follow. And he goes into this new community that is all these wealthy white kids, and he thinks that he needs to get into a fight with them because they're picking on him, they're saying racist jokes to him, and his only response his entire life has been, well, when somebody insults you, you have to hit them. So he goes and he actually punches this really big kid, older than him, a lot bigger than him too, in the face, and knocks him flat on his ass. And the kid looks at him and is just stunned, because he's like, I can't believe you actually hit me. Are you crazy? And Junior is looking at him like, what do you mean? Like, what are the rules? Like, what am I supposed to do in this situation? And he's realizing that for these wealthy kids, they're not needing to defend themselves or fight for themselves in a physical way, that all of their battles are verbal, and he doesn't really know how to deal with that. And I just think that that's so interesting, and it's also really heartbreaking that you can come from violence, that you can come from an abusive, like a physically abusive community, and go into another one where they still treat you horribly, but now all of the tools and the resources that you thought you had in order to defend yourself, that's not the way of the land anymore. And he's just so lost, and he's sad, and he's depressed, and he is lonely, and nobody talks to him, and people treat him awfully when they do talk to him. His best friend has abandoned him because Junior going to an all-white school, leaving the reservation, it's viewed as being a betrayal, so his best friend Rowdy actually punched him in the face before he left to go to this new school, and like completely, deteriorated their friendship, and now he really doesn't have anybody. And I think one of the most heartbreaking things is that for Junior, he talks about how he doesn't think that anybody would miss him if he were gone. Like, if he were to just disappear, if he were to run away, if he were to die, he doesn't even think that his family would miss him. It's heartbreaking, but he also tells it in such a way where he's like, yeah, this is just kind of the way that it is. Like, he doesn't sound sad for himself, he's not pitying himself, this is just life. I know I certainly didn't deal with half even of the trauma that he's going through. I would actually venture to say I didn't deal with even a fifth of it. So this is very enlightening for me. I'm going to continue to read this. I'm not going to say that I'm necessarily tearing through it, because I'm not a super fast reader, but I am spending a lot of time right now just sitting with this and appreciating it. And I've actually been talking about it with Keaton, and even he thinks that it sounds really interesting. So I'll probably be reading this on my live show tonight and just kind of chatting with people about it. I also want to hear some of their thoughts, spoiler free, of course. I'm not going to tell too much about what's going on in the story. I don't think that what I've told you so far is like overly spoilerish. It's kind of just, this is the way of his life from now on, because I am on page 68 and there's 230 pages. I will be very careful from now on to only talk about the themes in the book and not anything specific. And I'll see you all in a little bit. Hey everyone, so it's Friday night. It's just after my reading sprints. I had a great time with everybody who was able to come tonight. It was a smaller group than normal, but I think that's probably because of the holidays. I was so happy to see everybody who came, so if you were one of those people, thank you so much. You fill my heart with a large amount of joy. I was able, amazingly, to finish The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian. I think I read this book in 2 days, which is pretty abnormal for me, but I loved it so much. I was busting through this. It was amazing. This is 5 stars, 100%. There are so many emotions that are handled in this book. You have grief, despair, loss, love, isolation, loneliness, friendship, like branching out and finding yourself. It's a coming of age story. I don't want to necessarily call this a quintessential coming of age story because there are a lot of things that happen to Junior that might not happen to most people, but the way that he handles them and the way that they're talked about in here, everyone would benefit from reading this book. Like, I could not think of a single reason why somebody would not enjoy this. If you don't have a copy, you should go pick one up. It did win the National Book Award. I can tell you right now, after reading this, I don't know that I've really read other National Book Award winners, but I want to seek them out, because if this is the quality that I can expect from winners of this award, this is going to be something that I watch out for every single year. Without spoiling anything, this book, you can tell, is based off of Sherman Alexie's personal experience in his life. I know when I was looking up about him as an author in this book that it was said it's loosely based on his experiences on the Spokane Reservation where he grew up, and the themes of leaving and essentially betraying your own kind to go and try to make a better life for yourself. They're so strong in here, and you can tell that that is something that resonates with him specifically. Junior's relationship with Rowdy and then his growth with his, like, joining the basketball team were probably the most touching parts for me of this story, but particularly the sections with Rowdy, like, those hit the hardest in my opinion. I'm really surprised that I didn't cry while reading this, but it's also likely because I was on stream and I don't want to cry publicly on my stream. Had I been reading this on my own, I might have been bawling. There are some really shocking parts in here that I was not expecting from this book, and that was how I knew that, like, this is just, it's perfect. It is a perfect book. I do think that I am going to end the vlog here because I'm going to try to fit one more book in at the end of the month, but it doesn't fit in with the theme of the rest because it's not an Indigenous story. But before that, I want to give my final ranking of all of the books together that I've read this month so far. So this is my final rating from best favorite book to still pretty darn good, and that is going to be The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian, which was 5 stars, There by Tommy Orange, which was 4.5, Alexie, which was a 4.25, and The Only Good Indians, which is a 4, which means that I, at the end of this month, can recommend every book that I read. I hope that you will consider picking at least one of these up, you know, if you're interested in YA contemporary or adult kind of like political commentary, Alexie, which was a young adult fantasy, or an adult horror novel. You kind of have like your pick of the litter here, right? You can like run the gambit in any way that you want. And with that, I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day or evening, that you all stay safe out there, and I'll see you next time.